When I became a mom, I don't think I fully understood the magnitude of the responsibility I had just been given. And I want to just iterate that I had just been given. I had always wanted to be a mother, but I hadn't truly considered what that meant. This is tough for me to say, but without having had a particularly positive role model in my own mother, which doesn't mean I don't love her, I do very much, but I was left to learn quickly that parenting isn't something you can leave to chance or hope that things will simply work out. It doesn't really work that way. And suddenly, I was responsible for this small, helpless little life. It was a very powerful feeling and an overwhelmingly frightening one at the same time. Was I really capable of making the best decisions for my child and then children later on when I had more? As my children grew, I wondered how I would set boundaries and expectations while still allowing them to become their own person with ideas and beliefs that might be very different from my own. Over time, it became clear that my role was to keep my child safe, to love them unconditionally, and to support their individuality unless it crossed the core values in which I believed. My job was not to control who they became, but to prepare them for the world beyond our home. In many ways, our home became a microcosm of society where lessons about respect, responsibility, and compassion began. And then I began to ask myself, what if English were not my first language while living in the U.S.? What if resources were scarce or I was working more than full-time and felt stretched thin by the limits of what I could offer? How much harder would this already overwhelming responsibility feel? Welcome to Small and Gutsy, the podcast spotlighting nonprofits and social enterprises with budgets under $10 million. I'm Dr. Laura Shirk-Witkoff, and I'm excited to be your host. We bring you the less told stories of organizations that are bold, passionate, and making a real impact. Perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Small and Gutsy is more than a podcast. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We've recently been ranked number 8 on FeedSpot's top 30 social impact podcasts and number 3 and number 9 by Million Podcasts for the top 30 volunteer podcasts and for our youth empowerment episodes, respectively. We're proud of these honors, but honestly prouder still of our mission to elevate the visibility of small but mighty change makers. Do you happen to know a nonprofit or social enterprise doing incredible work? Please send them our way to laura@smallandgutsy.org. Mothers play a vital role in holding families together. They are often the emotional center of the home, balancing care, guidance, and stability while nurturing their children's growth and well-being. This is not discounting fathers, by the way. When mothers are supported, families become stronger. Children feel secure, learning is reinforced at home, and resilience is built across generations. By investing in mothers, we invest in the health, unity, and future of the entire family, and in turn, the broader community. South Central Los Angeles Ministry Project has known this for over 30 years. South Central Los Angeles Ministry Project, known as South Central LAMP, was founded in response to the 1992 civil unrest by a collaboration of 8 congregations of Catholic sisters committed to supporting families as their community rebuilt. By listening, and I just love this, by listening directly to neighborhood residents, the sisters learned that mothers were seeking opportunities to strengthen their parenting skills, improve English literacy, and prepare their children for success in school and in life. Guided by this community dialogue, South Central LAMP developed family-centered programs that empowered women and supported the whole family. Their offerings include parenting education, English as a second language classes, early childhood education through childcare, preschool, and pre-kindergarten, as well as health, wellness, and financial literacy seminars. They also provide family advocacy services to connect participants with community resources and operate a community food distribution program led by South Central LAMP graduates, which I also think is just amazing. All programs are provided totally free of charge. They believe that when mothers are supported and empowered, families thrive. By investing in women, they help them become confident advocates and their child's first and most important teacher. How true is that? I am so very honored to introduce my guest today, Diana Pinto, Executive Director of South Central LAMP, who's dedicated her life to uplifting marginalized communities with a deep focus on supporting women and children. Her Her commitment to this work is rooted in her own lived experience as the daughter of an immigrant mother who faced significant financial hardship while raising her family in Los Angeles. Growing up with these realities shaped Diana's understanding of resilience, struggle, and the importance of accessible, compassionate support systems. Diana holds a master's degree in Latin American Studies with an emphasis in grassroots organization and has completed executive leadership programs through Stanford University, the Rockwood Leadership Institute, and the Center for Nonprofit Management. Her leadership has been recognized with honors, including being named a Los Angeles City Council District 9 Shira, which is a she hero. I love that name. Receiving a Place Called Home's Girl Power Award. By the way, I did an episode for A Place Called Home years ago, which I loved. And I love that organization. And the Northgate Gonzalez Markets, who knows? You know Tos Award. I'll probably mispronounce that. So I'm sure, Diana, what is it? Say it. Share that with me. Juntos Award. Thank you. I have to learn Spanish, and I don't know Spanish, obviously. She has an incredible commitment to the South Los Angeles community, especially to the immigrant community, who often finds themselves, and particularly now, with less resource support and allies. So let's get started. Welcome, Diana, to the Small and Gutsy family. Your passion is so clear. And I'd actually love to hear, as I was thinking about this episode and thinking about you and reading about South Central Lamp, I'd love to hear that pivotal point in your own upbringing, if there even was a single point where you said, I want to give back to my community. This is how I want to give back. So take it away and forgive my very poor, inept pronunciation of your award.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really, really grateful to be able to share this story with you and with your audience as well. As I shared, I grew up actually not too far from here. I grew up on Vermont in Washington, and we grew up struggling with finances. There was a moment where my mom lost her job, and her partner also lost his job at the exact same time.
Ugh,
And I
horrible.
remember the struggle of being able to survive. And I was very young, but I still remember my mom crying at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how she was going to pay for rent or for food. And my aunt came in with boxes of food. She brought it in to support us during that time. And it really taught me about how community can actually support itself with the right people and the right support. And then my mom cleaned homes in Los Angeles, and she had really incredible bosses who really loved her and cared for her. And she had one specific boss who was amazing. And one day during the LA riots, actually, she invited us to stay with her so that
Wow.
we would be safe. And I thought that was just so moving to me. And then one day, my mom's car broke down, and she gave my mom a check for $5,000 just so she could go buy herself another car. In my community, especially with my mom, a car is extremely important because it's how she gets to work. But because she cleaned homes, sometimes she could clean two apartments in one day, but she needed to make sure she had transportation. And when she did that, when this person gave her $5,000 without even like blinking, I just thought, wow, like that generosity. I think that having all those moments in my life of people who cared just because made me want to be that person as well. And recognize that sometimes we just need a little help, not a huge amount, but we just need a small amount of help to get through the next phase. Because my stepfather worked in construction, and that was one of the hardest times, right? Because construction is seasonal.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
these are the moments where a little bit of support can get you pretty far along.
I love that story for so many reasons. One is because you never know where generosity is going to come. And you have to really open your village to what are the possibilities of someone doing that. And the other more significant piece, which I admire and love and hope I try to live by as much as I can, is none of that was transactional. It was all
Right.
transformational. It's so beautiful because the gift was never, I want this in exchange. The gift is a gift, and that is what a gift is.
Hmm.
That's a definition.
Yeah.
And so I think it's beautiful. And so you were given these absolutely wonderful examples of what giving really means and how much, even as you said, a small gift can, like someone bringing a box of food, can make an entire situation different. And it can make one's inner situation different. In other words, the way they think about their situation.
Right. And it also showed me that we have so much more power. Like my aunt who brought in the boxes of food, she was just as poor as the rest of us, but somehow she was able to do this. And that made me realize a little bit can go a very long way. And we have so much more agency than we realize.
Ugh, I love that too, because I'm sure that's conveyed at South Central Lamp with new moms. So, how did you get from sort of that pivotal point of, wow, this can really make a difference? I love my own community, which is clear that you do, to kind of ending up at South Central Lamp? How did you come into the position and the organization?
It was honestly just meant to be. It was a blessing,
Mhm.
I think. My husband and I had actually moved to Georgia because he was getting his PhD. And then we had come back and I was looking for a job. And I found a job that I've worked in nonprofit for most of my life. I've really enjoyed working in nonprofit. And then the job just wasn't fitting correctly. And I was looking for another job. And the job that I previously had was of being a director. Had run programs and I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't enough direct services. That was part of it. I like the direct services. And so South Central Lamp had an opening for a family advocate, which meant I wouldn't be a director. It would actually mean a step down. But I was excited about that because I wanted to do direct services. And so I applied for it. I became the family advocate for the agency. And probably shortly after the program director left, they hired a program director. It didn't end up working. So they asked if I was willing to try being a program director and because I had the experience. And I said, sure. And I loved it because my experience as a family advocate who went to do home visits, who led the parenting classes, who was part of the resource support, really helped me understand the needs of the community. And so as a program director, I was able to bring in more services, but for the entire community in a
I love
sense.
it.
So we
Hmm.
had health fairs, we had different financial seminars, we had all these things happening through the agency because I was able to understand what the need was from the constant day to day services that we were providing. And eventually, the executive director left. They hired a new executive director, and she was great. And I was really glad that I got to work with her. And when she left, she said, you need to run this agency. I'm going to
I
tell
love
the board that
it's
you need
great.
to be the one. And I was like, real I don't know. I was really, really nervous, to be honest.
Hmm.
Like I
Hmm.
said, direct services was the thing I loved a lot, but I was really worried that one day someone would walk in and they wouldn't see the beauty of the things we did
Wow.
and they
Yeah.
would seek funding before mission. And I was nervous about that. And so I said, okay, I'll try it. I will try to do this. And I'm really grateful because my husband was actually the one who pushed me. He's like, you can do this. You can
Great.
do this. I did. And I had a really great board who was very kind and generous with their time and support of me. So that's how I was able to become executive director with the agency.
I love that. And how long ago was that?
I became executive director in 2014. I've been with
Amazing.
the agency a total of 17 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
the progression of your career inside South Central Lamp for so many reasons. I do think that one of the things, because on the other side of my life, as I do coaching and I do organization development, is if someone gets a new job and they don't have previous experience with the organization, they need to sit and live in the organization for a period of time. So you already had done that. And the fact that you had done that doesn't mean things don't change and shift, but your level of awareness is so deep. And so, in some ways, I can understand you're missing direct service. And at the same time, you get to have an overview. And because you have done the direct service work, you really can marry those two in a way that probably pushes the organization to achieve more than it would necessarily otherwise. And the other thing that you said that I think is so remarkable is so, especially now when resources are so tight, but there have been other times when they've been tight, is there's this mission creep like, oh, I think we can do that. We should apply for that funding. And I love that you really think, does it fit our constituency? Does it fit our participants? Does it fit our mission? Does it make sense for us? And those are all the best questions for leadership to ask. And I also appreciate that you honor your board. by sharing that they were so supportive of you because a board and an executive director don't always see eye to eye. And yet at the same time, it's a marriage that needs to work. It just does.
Uh-huh.
So I love that. And I don't know that our audience will be able to hear any of this, but I can hear the kids a little bit in the background. And I love
Yeah,
that. I have to say, the program is going on right outside your door. It's beautiful. So,
it is. Yes.
mhm,
And during COVID, because of course there was a moment where we couldn't have the kids on site, we didn't shut
right.
down the way other places did. We stayed open actually the entire time intentionally. We just
Wow.
had to like kind of for the time that the governor asked us to not be, to shelter in place, that was the time we closed. But it was one of the things I missed the most. It was like not seeing the kids or the families. It just made it paperwork at that point and not
Yeah.
being able to see them and do workshops with them. It was just like, "Oh, great, another bill signed."
Right. 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 Because you really get to know the people who participate. They become
You do.
your extended family, frankly, is my guess,
They do.
which is
Yeah.
beautiful. So, talk to my audience about the program. Tell us what happens and how do people choose different things and how do they get to you?
Believe it or not, it's word of mouth how people find us. In our community particularly is word of mouth is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
If a person tells you go to this place, then you're going to go to this place. We have a lot of people who have either been friends of people who have been in our program, relatives of people who have been in our program. Most of everybody we get are word of mouth because our program is kind of unique. Most agencies work with children and their parents, but we work with the mothers and their children. So our mission is women and their children. And our programs are really centered around understanding that the mother is the most important person to support a child in their growth, right? And one of the reasons is because a lot of the women who enter our program come from patriarchal countries that often makes it really difficult for them to advocate for their children because I always tell people, the doctor's right, the priest is right, the
Same.
attorney's right, everybody else is
Yeah.
right except for you. And that's where we're trying to make sure that the women we serve understand how important their role is, but also how magical they themselves are.
Oh,
And
I love
so
it.
they can have
Mhm.
agency over their children. And so the program, when we say we have a parenting program, it's such a simple term for something so much bigger than what we do because the parenting program provides a lot of like workshops and different opportunities to help the women grow in their self-esteem and also in their understanding. So we have a curriculum that's called Nurturing Parenting, and the idea is to really understand where some of our own values and beliefs have come so that we can decide if these are still something we believe in and we want to teach our children these things. And this is huge because so many of us parent the way we were parented, and we
Yeah.
have to make intentional decisions to
Yeah.
change these things. And it's hard. It's really
Very hard.
difficult. I have accidentally found myself doing things that my mom did
Yeah.
and things that were not the best things. Like she was a great mom. She had moments, of course, but unfortunately, there were times where I picked these things up and I had to apologize to my kid. I'm really sorry. I didn't even connect that I did that. And those are some of the things that we get to have a conversation. We also celebrate, for example, International Women's Day. And
Oh,
we
it's great.
had one of the
Mhm.
moms say to us, I didn't realize that women were valuable. I didn't realize that was
Wow.
important. And that hit me hard because it's not just the fact that she didn't realize she was valuable, but how can she teach her children that women are valuable
Right.
if
If
she
she
herself
doesn't
hasn't
feel
been
it.
taught these? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so our program is really holistic in that sense, where we have a parenting program that has various components to it. We've got an English as a second language program, and then we have a family advocate. We have a parent and child interactive literacy program, which brings parent and child together to do something like a parent and me class, but it's focused on literacy. And the parent gets to be here from 8:30 to basically 1 p.m. And they're taking individual classes. And while they're doing that, their children are in one of our early childhood education
It's
programs.
fabulous.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, so we take the kids in as soon as they're ready to bring them. They have to be able to go to the restroom. It's like we have an infant room and toddlers and preschool. And so moms are really comfortable because many of them, oftentimes, they're the sole person at home. And
Right.
so many of them feel isolated. They're not really sure who they can trust their children to. And so this is an opportunity for them to just go and look out the window, or as like you mentioned, you can hear them outside singing. And so they know that their children are safe and they can learn with that calmness.
I mean, it's so beautiful in so many ways because you're catching women at very vulnerable stages in their own lives. Because when you're a new parent, even if you have generational support in your home, let's say like a grandparent is there, you still want to have your own life with your child and you want to be able to make decisions that are informed. And when you connect with community with guidance and support, you're able to do that. And the whole piece that you talked about in terms of the value of women, when you come from a culture, and this isn't necessarily a single culture, many cultures suffer from this.
Uh-huh.
And generationally, I certainly did to an extent, was the men are right. The men are the dominant. The men are, and again, it's not dismissive of the value of men, but that's part of our more patriarchal society anyway. And so to have that experience that, oh, you can make a decision and you can really hear what other mothers are struggling with. And to have
Hmm.
that time where you're not just isolated, maybe with your child or within your home, you're able to really be part of a community and a community that builds networks and connections.
And that's exactly it. I always say there's so much stuff that happens that you can't necessarily see on paper.
Right.
Here, they start building relationships and friendships, and you see that they start asking each other for favors. And, oh, I have a job interview. Can you watch the child? Or, hey, I need a moment. Do you mind? Or, let's go together and get coffee because I need something. And that's such an important part of our health. And when a mother is healthy mentally and physically, then their family, by extension, will end up being healthier as well.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
love
part of
that.
our goal with them too.
So you take from infancy all the way till age 5 or till they go to school?
Yeah, until they're ready to go into kindergarten. And then we also have an after school program now. And
Nice.
our after school program takes the children from kindergarten through fifth grade. And that was
So
intentional
great.
because we wanted
Mhm.
to be able to follow them as far as possible if that's what the family wanted. And then that program also has an adult education component. So twice a month, they get the opportunity to come and work on some activities with their children, but also learn different things. So we had a workshop about puberty and the female
Great.
body. We had a
Mhm.
workshop on puberty and the male body, and intentionally bring the dad, bring the mom. Really, we want to inform families as much as possible so that the children are comfortable coming to them and asking them these questions. I always tell the moms, wouldn't it be better for your children to come and ask you about sex or
Yeah,
about their bodies than going to their friends?
right.
Because
Or
their
seeing
friends
it
are not going to
online.
really know.
Right.
Exactly, or seeing
Right,
it
right.
online, and they're
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, because it's hard. It's often, it's often really hard for them. It's not something we speak about a lot,
Right. It's so
and
true.
culturally, it's
Mhm.
hard too. And so we do a lot of workshops intentionally to kind of help them be more comfortable with this.
Yeah, you're normalizing the conversation in a way so that if the parent feels comfortable and normalizes the conversation, then the child will naturally feel safer coming to the parent and asking questions, hopefully without judgment, but really with information, which is what your focus is, which is wonderful. I'm glad you did the secondary elementary component because then you do get to see these children grow over time and any hiccups or issues that come up these mothers and sometimes fathers, it sounds like, have a place to be able to go and talk about it and get some help and support. A question which I love that you brought before is a literacy program. And I love that because I'm guessing that many of your participants, English is not their first language, but it may be eventually their child. So by the time the child gets into kindergarten or first grade, they may be the person who translates a little bit for their parent. And so the role can
Mhm.
be a heavy burden for the child. And you're reversing that. You're saying, no, we're going to reverse this so that the parent feels empowered Doesn't mean that the child may not excel because they're younger and learning a language at a younger age is often easier. But the fact the parent gets that opportunity and it's commingled in a way early on gives that parent an advantage, I think, in a really substantial way.
It absolutely does. And oftentimes, when children are put in those situations, which I get culturally, that's
Yeah,
very common,
of
and we
course.
feel really proud to be able to support and all of that stuff. But it is a lot on a child, and they become parentified, and that's really difficult oftentimes. And part of the work we do, I believe, is to be able to mitigate generational trauma, because once the parent starts healing and recognizing like how this is a lot on a child, then they'll make sure to care for the child. And that way they don't transfer trauma into the child.
Right.
The other thing that I've learned is, so if I can share this really great story, I had this one story that made me, I was just so proud. So one of the mothers that we served, they broke into their car and she had to go do a police report. And her husband was like, "You're up. You're the only one who knows English, the adult that knows English here." And she said she was really nervous and she was able to do the police report, spoke to somebody, and all in English. And she said, "I felt like I contributed so much to my family that day. Like,
Mhm,
yes,
beautiful.
it was worth
Mhm.
it. I learned something and I am a contributor." And that gives them so much self-esteem as well. It kind of builds them and recognizing that they are partners in this relationship, not just the wife.
Right.
And I had another mother come and share with me that she ended up leaving a domestic violence situation.
Yeah.
And she was able to use her English to be able to get a job. And that she said that the family
Amazing.
didn't speak any Spanish. So it was so powerful that she was able to use what she learned here to be able to work independently and get away from a situation that wasn't healthy for her. So it's amazing.
Two beautiful, beautiful examples. And I just want to comment. I'm sorry the woman's car was broken or the family car was broken into, but you're absolutely right. The level of empowerment that that gives when someone not only can begin, speak the language, but fully understand what's being asked of them to be able to then give good information. And the second one is life saving. You saved that woman's life by the fact that she could learn enough English to be able to get out of the situation and be able to make money on her own so that she could be self-supporting in some way. And I mean, that's just remarkable. And I love your comment and the depth at which your program goes in order to interrupt generational trauma. Many of us have experienced that for a whole host of reasons. And to have that interrupted saves the next generation.
Yeah.
You are saving the next generation. And I'm not being dramatic. I'm being really honest about it. Most people don't think about this stuff. And the fact that you've taken the time to capitalize and develop a program that does that in a concerted effort and seen evidence that it shifts and changes individual mothers' self esteem is enormous. I mean, so many of us could have benefited from that
Yeah.
early on. So, yeah, I think it's incredible,
I've
you
said
know?
that too. I've said, I wish my mom would have been part of this program too, because I think it would have
Yeah,
really saved me and my sister and even her some really, traumatic experiences if she had had the support to be able to understand her value was not based on a man or her value was not based on what she contributed,
right.
that she deserved respect no matter what.
It changes the nature of how then she would have engaged with you and your
Absolutely.
sister,
Yeah.
for sure. And the world. She would have been a different role model for you in the
Absolutely.
world. But now you're doing it for your children. So you've interrupted that and you're interrupting it for others, which is again really remarkable. So since you were sharing some aha moments, any other aha moments you've been there for so long? I don't know if there are any aha moments with children that stand out or with families or mothers that you want to share.
One of the things that I really love that we do at South Central Lamp is that we teach the women about the educational system in the United States. And one of the things we do is really get them to start thinking about what school they want their children to go to, how they want to be involved in their children's school. And so we start explaining these things to them.
It's great.
And there was this particular moment that made me, I enjoyed it so much because one of the moms that we served, she went to an elementary school because she was going to enroll her child in kinder. And she had a child. Her last child was probably like 17. And then she had a baby. And then, so there's a huge gap between her children. And she said, I have never done any of these things for my other children.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do something different with this child, right? Now that I know that I can do something different. She went to the elementary school and she started asking all these questions, including, I think that back in the day, they used to have I want to say like an API score for the schools so that you would see like they would be ranked by the standardized testing. There was a whole website for them as well. And they removed it at some point. But she went and she said, hey, I'd like to know what the score of the school is. And the person leading the orientation said, wait, hold on 1 second. And then she walked out, and the husband of the mother was like, oh man, like, what did you do? Like, now we're going to have, like, what's going to happen? And then the principal came in with the woman and he said, can you repeat your question again? And she got nervous and she said, well, like, I just wanted to know the score. And he said to everyone in the room, this is the first time in like 7 years that I've been a principal that anyone has asked me this question. And he said,
Ask that.
you should all be
Wow.
asking these questions. And he said, where did I
I'm
know, me too.
getting
I got really
goosebumps.
excited.
Yeah.
He said, where
Mhm.
did you learn
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
words? And she got a little nervous and she said, lamb. And
She didn't want to
she was like, "Oh my
inappropriately
gosh, we're
out
gonna
you, but
get."
she was a good
Exactly,
advertisement.
yeah. And so I was cracking up, and she came and she shared and she told me about this, and she said, "I felt so proud that I had done this for my kid and that, like, I knew something." And not only that, but she was in a space where other people learned these things as well. And she was spreading that knowledge. And one of the things we've noticed is that oftentimes the women we serve will go on to be leaders in the schools of their children to a
Oh,
point where
I
they
love it.
get
Mhm.
elected often to be the leaders, like the president of the council, whatever it is. And I remember one time one of the moms came to us and she said, so I've been asked to be the leader for this council. And I'm a little nervous because they would like me to take a complaint to the school because there's an issue going on with the school. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, how do you want to do this? She said, do you mind working with me on this? Because I'm a little nervous. And I said,
Oh,
absolutely, bring everybody who you want to. Because remember, we're a community based organization. Our goal is to support community. Whether you
right.
run through our program or not, we want to be able to support community. And so we did. And I shared with her, like, here are some ways you can talk to them. These are like the ways that you will get their attention. Because one of the things, again, we do is how do you speak to school educators when you're having an issue with your child, right? And so to us, it was extremely important to teach them ways that they can communicate without necessarily losing their audience, which losing their audience would be like storming in and yelling and all of that. I said, that
Right.
doesn't get
Being
exactly. I
aggressive.
said, that doesn't get you
Mhm.
anywhere. That'll
Mhm.
only get you to a person who's defensive. And so you want to create a space
Right.
where there's actually conversation happening. And so she did, and she went out and they were able to talk to the principal and have a conversation and things were able to be changed. And afterwards, she came and she said, wow, that is hard. I can't believe you do that all the time. And I
Mm.
said, yep,
But she learned of something so valuable in terms of communication. And it's exactly what you're saying is if you can open a door for someone to listen, that's half
yep,
the battle. Whether they agree with you or not is a different issue. But if you can't even get to the place of where they're listening to your concern, you have no chance. So that's an incredible life lesson, whether it's in a school situation, in a work situation, in a friend situation. All of those are so key in that with
that's
that
right.
approach,
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
the so this is exactly what we share with them when we're teaching the classes. All of these can be used in other parts of your life. They don't have to just be for
Right,
the school or for your child. They can be part of your relationship with your husband or with an aunt or a friend or
right,
getting a job or you're managing. And so all of these techniques, I will always say to them, we teach you as if you were professionals already. We're not bringing in workshops as in, oh, like we are not dumbing down this information. We're giving you accurate information
right.
because we know one, you're smart. Two, you can handle this. And 3, we want you to thrive with this.
Well, you're giving them tools to practice when they're in these situations. And not every situation is going to turn out exactly the way they want, but you have a better chance in using the tools that you're teaching. So that leads me to sort of the financial literacy classes. And is that only for adults? Do you sometimes think about that as after school for your older, like your fifth graders? I don't know why that just came to me, but I thought, what a great
Yes,
opportunity.
actually, that's a really great, you caught that. Yes, so we partnered with another agency to bring in these workshops for financial literacy,
Right.
and I love them because the mothers really get to understand finances and recognize some of the decisions they're making so that they recognize they have a lot more agency in their finances than they realize. And
I
then
love it.
I wanted
Hmm.
the kids to also learn this. My husband, his degree was in family environmental consumer sciences. So budget is in finances was a big part of the way he wanted our child to be raised. And he would always say, Learning about finances is similar to like brushing your teeth. Like it's one of those values we have to teach our children. Like you just do it every day, you just
Yeah.
practice it."
It's not
Exactly.
automatic.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so we actually partnered with a bank and they came and taught the after school program about finances. And I think it's extremely important for our children to learn these things. And we want to keep doing this every year and bringing it to the kids every year. Because, especially, I will say, as a daughter of an immigrant, I know that when I went to college, no idea how to work with credit cards, no idea how to do finances.
Right.
Because, of course, I grew up in a very different world. I remember somebody once telling me that the way they do their budgeting or finances is they use their credit card for every single purchase and then they write a check at the end. Never had I heard of something like that. I was like, I'm
Right.
so
So
nervous.
funny.
I can't even
Right.
imagine doing that.
Mhm.
And that's because I didn't have that experience. And so this is why we want to bring this and learning and making sure our families understand how important the social security number is for their children. Because sometimes people will let their friends borrow their child's social security number because they need it for certain things. And I just want to remind them that that number is so important to their children. And so these are little things that they don't come from countries that use these numbers in that way. And credit cards and credit scores are not in every single country. And so these are the things that we're trying to expose them to so they're prepared and their children are also protected and prepared.
That is so smart because you don't think about if that hasn't been somebody's experience, they don't understand the value basically that it is in this country. You can't borrow, you can't, there's so many things you can't do. You can't get your own credit card if you don't have a certain score or you haven't been responsible, except if it's a very first time and there's a reason for it. But I think it's great that you're exposing children to this too, because and hopefully the parents take away that this should be, like your husband said, I love that, should be like brushing your teeth. You should be able to look at your bank account, know where you spent the money, what you have in there, how to save. I mean, it's all of that. Even the littlest amount can add up over time. People don't really realize that either. They think, oh, it's just, I'm going to throw, when I was a kid, throw coins in a jar until that jar was filled. And then you realize you had $25 sitting on your dresser instead of actually trying to put it in a at that time, a savings account, you know? Yeah.
It's true. It's
Hmm.
true. It's very true. And I think one of the other things is that our kids are so smart and so we have this thing called the kindness store at the after school program.
Love it.
And the kindness store is if we catch you doing something kind, you get kindness dollars.
Ugh,
And
love
that teaches
that.
them
Yeah.
to, share kindness,
Mhm, mhm.
but also to be able to save up money. So we have like bigger items and we have smaller items. And some of the kids will learn to save money through this kindness store.
I love
And I
that.
have to give it to my sister because it was her. She used to run a boys and girls club. My mom's two daughters were a nonprofit.
I love
And she
it.
used to run a boys and girls club in Las Vegas. And she started the kindness store. And when we started the after school program, I was like, I have to use the kindness
I
store. I
love
can't even
this.
imagine how awesome that is. And honestly, the kids really recognize kindness through these things because kindness, sometimes we think are big moments or big situations, but kindness is helping someone when things fall or
Right.
opening the door for someone or giving the seat to someone. And so the kids are learning these
I
things.
love it.
But my favorite is also when they get to save money and they're like, just like they have their eye on that one particular item.
That's so funny. And you know what's interesting is I know before I talked about like the difference between transactional and transformational. When you're little, when you're young and your brain is developing, it's really okay to have a prize at the end. Oftentimes we need those goals until it becomes habit. And so you're teaching that kindness that will become habit, whether there's a kindness dollar at the end or not. And you probably have a
Yeah.
criteria of what is deserving of that dollar and then how they choose to save it or not save it. So it teaches a lot of things like, can you hold out and wait? How patient are you? Can you reach the goal that you have set for yourself? And be thoughtful about how you're going to exercise kindness in this context. So I love it. I think it's just great.
And we found that sometimes the kids will buy things for their parents through the
Oh,
kindness store.
God, that's
And
beautiful.
that just like
Mm,
warms my heart
yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And then we also, one of the other things that I really love that we do at South Central Lamp when you were asking me about the kids is that we do a lot of assessments for the kids. Oftentimes, this is the first time the families enter like a formal educational setting. And so it allows us the opportunity to support in them understanding developmental stages of their child. We do workshops on that.
It's great.
But also, oftentimes, a lot of the parents aren't really sure, like, is that my child developing correctly? Are there things like there's like questions? And, sometimes they're a little nervous about asking family members.
Right.
Sometimes they don't like asking the doctor because the doctor sees the child for like 10 minutes and then like that's it. And so we've had a lot of opportunities to be able to refer children to the regional center
It's
because
great.
we've found that they have characteristics of autism. And even just recently, we had a mom who came in and we referred her, this is probably up to 10 years ago at this point,
Wow.
and her child is doing great. He is thriving. He's already like, I think in 8th grade. And she said that all of this has really helped her. And she was very involved in his school, becoming president of the parent council in the school as well. And I really appreciate being able to do this because my kid was diagnosed autistic and we didn't get a diagnosis for her till she was almost 15 years old.
Oh my,
Nobody
wow.
nobody
Wow.
caught that there were
Mhm.
symptoms of or characteristics of autism. And the thing that makes me laugh is that when the doctor said, "You didn't notice anything different about her?" And one, I only have one child, so I couldn't compare.
Right.
But two, I said to the doctor, "No, she does a lot of the same things I do. I don't understand why."
Right.
And then the doctor was like, "Oh, okay, now we know."
But you can
And so
understand her that way too. Mhm.
yeah, and that was the lesson, right? That sometimes as parents, we don't see these things
Right.
because they're part of how we grew up. And so being able to help the parents understand these characteristics and see them. Also, because when we have workshops, we talk about autism and we talk about ADHD and how the different brain forms. And so that helps it kind of be easier to see, oh, wait, he has an assessment of this or that. And it doesn't feel as scary because we've already had a community workshop. They understand it, they've had questions, and they themselves will go, "Ding,
Right.
I'm starting to see something here."
Right. And they're not
And
alone
being
in
able to
that.
get the services.
Mhm. The
Yeah,
services
they're
are
not alone
key.
on that.
Yeah. So my second one is on the autism spectrum, interestingly enough, and he's 32. He'll be 33 this summer, and he's a librarian, very smart. And yet, remember how long ago this was. I had physicians when he wasn't talking at age 2 and very frustrated. I had physicians say, you don't want to label him, so don't get him services. I was like, oh, there's no chance. I'm going to go get him services. But the services were
Good for you.
not as good, but it was really a challenge. And I'm not sure he had the best services in some way that he could have, because in public school where he grew up on the East Coast at that time, they would just give you an aid. Well, he didn't need an aid to translate for him. He was bright. He needed support in the classroom because he learned in an alternative way, right? His brain worked a
Mhm.
little differently. And he's clearly has proven that he is intelligent, but he wasn't treated as an intelligent child all through elementary and middle. And finally in high school, we pushed the system to put him in a specialized program where he excelled and then went on to community college and then went on to university and then went on to grad school. But I mean, it was quite a process, an advocacy process. And so much you as a parent, and I certainly did this, I sat back and thought, okay, well, the school seems to know they're educators, I'm not. And there wasn't anything necessarily that I could have pushed for, but they've learned so much since then. So, in some ways, I think what you're doing is such a huge service because even if you have a question about it, I believe getting your child any early help, whether they're on the spectrum or not, is beneficial for everybody in the classroom, beneficial for your child, like if it has to be in the classroom. And I remember other parents, which was sort of sad, in one of those parent council meetings or one of the school meetings saying, I don't want my child in a classroom with any child who has a disability of any kind because they'll slow them down. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh, it's just the opposite. You're building compassion and they might see the world a little differently and they will enhance your child. But I was so dumbfounded that someone would say that, it muted me. So it's interesting. I love the advocacy that you offer these mothers who might have a question because they'll go politely head to head with another parent who might say something like that. And as long as the kid is not in danger, of course. But my son was absolutely pliable, wonderful, and just learned differently and needed to be in an environment
Yeah.
that offered
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So,
It's absolutely true.
yeah,
And similarly, my daughter was very quiet. And so, because she was quiet and she was very intelligent, the school said, no, we're not going to assess her.
right.
She's fine.
Right.
She's basically not a problem child. So, we're not going to assess her. And she's already 14 at this point. And I couldn't get to the regional center. She said she was too old to be assessed. I couldn't get the doctor to assess her. So I got really, really lucky because UCLA was doing a study and that's how I was able to
That's
get her in.
great.
And then they assessed her. And then I had the letter saying these things. And then I was able to move forward. And so I tell the women we serve, you're really lucky to be able to get your children assessed this early. You don't understand how challenging it is once
Right.
they get to a certain age. And also, I will share with them, you may not realize this, but your children are going to need accommodations in the classroom, not because there's anything wrong with them, but because they might just have a lot of sensory overload. And that means they need to wear like, headphones or they need to be in a darker space. There's nothing wrong with them, but these are their needs. And so this is where you as an advocate can really support them in these things.
That is so key and so important because, again, kids develop at such different rates and not one
Mhm.
size fits all. And as soon as parents kind of recognize that, there are very few, and maybe they're just extremely lucky parents out there who had just a one directive path because that doesn't always exist. And so the fact that you're giving them all this information, all this knowledge, is giving them an opportunity to look at the situation as a positive versus a negative. These are supports that help your child grow. There's not something wrong with your child. And I love that
That's exactly
approach.
it.
It's like
Yeah.
what it should be. And it's what they should lead with when they're confronted by potentially other parents in a public school setting that might say otherwise. Because you know what? It's an
Yeah.
opportunity for everyone in the classroom to show compassion and to learn because the way that my son or your daughter might approach a problem solving would be so much, it would enhance the outcome of that, of solving that problem. I have no doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of studies that neurodivergent people are honestly, it's biological. Like,
Right,
we need them
right,
because
right,
they think differently, they
right.
find solutions differently. And the other thing is, part of this is because, growing up the way I grew up is that unless you're like everybody else, then you're abnormal, right? And
Yeah,
so
yes,
one of the
right, which
one
is
of the
so
things was
crazy.
that
Yeah,
like my kid had a lot of sensory for sound was a lot for
yeah,
her.
so did
So
mine.
she would have to wear earphones or we'd leave early from spaces because it was really too much. And in my culture, they would be like I was like she was rejecting them and like, oh well, she's leaving again or like this and that. And there was no sensitivity to the fact that this was a disability that could not be seen.
Right.
And that's one of the things I want the mothers to advocate for their children, even if it means And this is what I say to them, even if it means you have to stand up for them from your own family, because you are the most important advocate to your child. Because if you don't do it, who will?
Right.
Who will love your child if it's not you?
I think that's so beautiful. And it's so important because it also teaches, or the child sees and feels that they are accepted within their own family because you have a mother who says, oh, no, we're not accepting this. This is not going to happen this way. And I had to do that certainly in for multiple kids in my situation. And I am grateful because I didn't have a role model that taught me that. At some point, I had to make that pivotal decision for myself. And do we want easy and straight path? Sure, who wouldn't? But that isn't the nature of what I was given. And in fact, I think my children are remarkable and I'm very grateful. And you're teaching that. Had I had that in a very early age, a place that had said that to me rather than the opposite, it would have been just an incredible gift. So you're giving these families an incredible gift, not just in terms of the space and the education that is sort of the academic piece and the English as a second language and the financial literacy, but the emotional and social component of what you offer is the only thing I can think of is that silly credit card. Example, it's priceless. It's incredibly priceless. And there's just nothing that could be said that would top that because it's a lifelong experience that it sounds like they keep coming back to. So I have one other quick question, and I'm sorry to keep you on, but you're just so full of wonderful information and beautiful examples. Some of your former students seem to come back and serve as advocates, and I would love to know more about that. I think that is such a wonderful 360 for you, and I just think, gosh, how great! What a that you can't have a better compliment than that. So share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, how I mentioned that we're a community-based organization and I was a program director. And so when I was a program director, the opportunity to partner with St. Francis Center and bring a food distribution program came to us. And I went to the women we served and I said, listen, I would love to bring this to LAMP. I would love to bring this for the community. But I'm going to be really honest with you. We don't have the staff for it. We are limited. And so I want you to help us if you are willing to do this with us.
Great.
And the women said, absolutely, we'll do this. And so once they graduated, so it was really the graduating women, because our program is a 3-year family literacy program if
Love it.
they'd like to stay for 3 years, because we have 3 levels of English as a second language and we're able to teach for those 3 years. And so it was a 3-year family literacy program graduates that signed up to support. And so the first year, because we were still like working on it, they would leave class early and they would help us and they would line up. And there was about 10 to 12 of them helping us do this
Wow.
thing.
Hmm.
And then eventually they just stayed on. And then the next year, new women came in and the previous ones stayed as well. Some of them eventually life changed and they had to leave.
Right.
But it was always like the next generation and the next generation would come in. And now they still come to support us and they're still running the program.
I
It's
love
them. And
it.
I
I
and I
love
remind
that.
them
Hmm.
this is part of the leadership that we teach, right? One of the things we do at South Central Amp is we teach leadership as well, because I strongly believe that whether we have a little or a lot, we have a lot to contribute to community and we all can contribute in one way. And there is a privilege in being able to give back,
For
right?
sure.
And so I want them to feel that sense of I can give back. And so I've always been like, we need to do something. So from the little that we have, just like my aunt, from the little that she had, she was able to help. And so that's what we do
Love
here.
it.
And so they started running the food distribution program. And it's been such an experience. They actually were awarded by the city for their support as well. And I was so
Fabulous.
proud of them. And we were really nervous because with everything happening with ICE, there was a moment where at the beginning of the summer last year, some of them said,
I
we
can't
can't,
show up.
we're
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
nervous. We
Yeah.
can't go right now. And we said, absolutely. And what we did at LAMP actually is we did the People United project, which was to bring food boxes to the community that we could support, including the volunteers. And then after a little while, they were like, okay, I feel better. I'm comfortable. And they started coming in and they started supporting. and volunteering again.
Beautiful.
And they feel like such a purpose. Like, honestly, they rarely miss. I don't think I have a lot of them miss. If they do, it's one or two. And then we have some that just have never missed. I know they get a lot out of it as well. And recently, one of the volunteers who had been part of our program was able to get a job at the school where her daughter used to go to.
Oh, that's
And now
great.
she's working there part-time, and she's using the skills not only that we taught her here at the agency, but the skills of being a volunteer,
For
which
sure.
means you have to learn how to coordinate, but work with your volunteer coworkers and then with community, which is,
For
challenging. They're like
sure.
your customers. So you have moments where you make someone happy and make somebody else unhappy. And so she was able to use these skills, and we're so proud of her and happy for her, because part of it is what people don't recognize is that oftentimes learning English can also help a family be able to get a second job so that the
Right.
income is higher, so that they're
Right.
able to give their children other things. And then, of course, I don't know if this is everyone, but I think a lot of us, especially, like, we get a lot of pride in being able to contribute to our family, but to be able to have a job too.
Of
It's a
course, it's
lot of,
our
it's very pride
identity.
for us.
At
Yeah.
times, it helps
Yeah,
define us because we are contributors and we get to be providers
exactly.
within our own household. So I think there's so much to be said for that. But I love these examples because it is leadership, it is volunteerism, and it has its complex nature within that group itself. And then couple that with how they engage with the community. And again, they've been in those shoes, so they know what that feels like. And so they're going to be much more empathic and compassionate to the people who come and need the food that they're offering. It's beautiful. And so you've created not only a program, but a legacy within that program of graduates who come out of your program and then practice their English, practice their volunteerism, practice their organizational skills, practice their community engagement. I mean, it's sort of a little bit of everything, which is wonderful. And I love that she got a part-time job on top of that, this one particular
Yeah.
volunteer. It's just beautiful.
We were, and we have a partnership with Queen's Care. So they come to South Central Lamp every other week and they provide health services. And so one of the things that they do, because it's free health services, is that the mom was able to come and get her TB test here and she didn't have to pay, she didn't have to go to another clinic. And she has that service here at South Central Lamp. And that's part of what we wanted to do as a holistic approach, which is have health services here if we're
It's
able
great.
to have learning, have all of these things, have their children on site, because we wanted to remove as many blocks for them as possible.
I love that because they feel safe there. So if they go anywhere, they're going to go there and say, okay, I need this or I
Yeah.
have this health issue because you've already created the safety and the reputation and the consistency and that they have agency over their own body. So you're just providing that education they get to choose, which is amazing.
Yes.
So, toward the end of the podcast, I don't know if you know this or not, we always have a round of quick and gutsy questions. So, they're fun and they're silly, and you can pass if you want to, but they're just fun. There's no wrong answer that you can give. So, are you
Okay.
ready for your quick and gutsies?
I am.
Okay. So, what is at the top of your wish list for South Central Lamp? However, the answer can't be money or funding because every nonprofit would ask for that. So, what's at the top of your wish list?
I don't know if a building is money or funding, but at one point, I would love for us to have a space that we could create specifically for the programs that we provide.
That would be your own building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would fit the needs,
Yeah.
right, of the space
Yeah.
of what we do here. But the other thing, honestly, one of the things that we're hoping to eventually, I mean, once we have all of that stuff, I love the idea of doing a neurodivergent summit in Spanish for the community.
Oh, I love that.
So
Wow.
that they start understanding what neurodivergency is and all the tiny little aspects of it when you have to get an IEP and what is that? Similar to what you said, they get told this too, that their children are going to be stigmatized, that's going to follow them, all of these things. And I really would love to be able to do something like that
I
for
love
the
that.
community
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of information that's incorrect, and there's so much they could be doing for their kids.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that wish. I wonder if you could ever partner with UCLA where your daughter got support, if they would ever partner with you to
Oh,
do that. Because I can't help being a consultant on the side, but I love that. And I think having a program in Spanish for your community would be beautiful. And they could actually come in and do an English component and you do the Spanish component. But that would be a
yeah.
great because they've already done the groundwork or the homework, or maybe they have the network, but you really have the population and you have the language. So I think it would be amazing. Well, I hope that happens for
I
you.
would welcome partnership with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think it would be great. If you were to think of a song that describes South Central Lamp, what would it be?
So, do you remember "We Are Family"
Oh,
is the
yeah.
song that like
Yeah.
comes in my
The
head?
Pointer Sisters. I love that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's the
Yeah.
song that reminds me because
Mm.
they build such connections with each other and with the staff that they become a really big part of who we are. So their struggles are our struggles. And so this is how I feel like that song fits us so
Oh,
well.
it so does. You guys are family, and anybody who walks through your door is part of your family. You welcome them. You have a big welcome mat outside. It's so clear to me. What makes South Central Lamp gutsy? Because you're definitely gutsy.
We were started by 8 orders of women religious, and these women, their goal was to create a social justice agency, right? And in a time where during the 90s, where there was a lot of issues going on, they went and they talked to community and they asked how can they be of service. And they created a program that was specifically for women and their children. And we've been really careful to only receive funding that would support women and their children. And I think that one of the things that I tell people is that we never received Head Start funding, which is really popular, Head Start funding. And a lot of people are struggling right now because of the federal government and what's going on, right? And it was intentional. I was really uncomfortable with receiving Head Start funding. I said to myself, one day there's going to be an administration that's not going to be open to our community, and they're going to have the names of those we serve. And I'm not really comfortable. We would have to change the way we provide our services in order to do this. And so I think we're gutsy because we're very particular in how we receive funding, because it's always about mission, even if that keeps us struggling just a little bit more. Because I tell people, and that is why we're poor, because we don't have all this funding, but we're really
Right,
picky
right. And I love it because
because
you
we want
have,
to protect our family.
well, you walk the walk. You have agency. You, right? I mean, that's who you
Right.
are. And I love that
Yeah.
because you serve continually as a role model for your, not just your participants, but your staff, your board. You're all a role model for this is how we do things. We want to have agency because we know what works best because it comes from our community and a long history. And
Mhm.
we're sticking with that. So I admire that.
Yeah.
I think it's very gutsy and I think it's very honorable, quite frankly, because you're not going to change
you.
yourselves inside out for somebody else. And you're telling your mothers, don't recreate or continue a situation that you know legacy wise is not a good thing. It's not a generational thing you want to pass down. So here's your opportunity to shift that now, and we're going to help you do that. I just love it. I think it's amazing. What is something that outsiders or maybe even a few insiders don't know about South Central Lamp?
I would say that the women and the families that we serve are extremely generous with what they can give.
Love it.
They are always trying to find ways to support us in different manners. So when COVID hit, we couldn't have the volunteers here anymore because of everything going on,
Right.
but also because they had to take care of their children at home, right? And so what we did, a group of us, which was just 5 staff, all females, ran the food distribution program during that time period, right?
Wow.
And it was really, really challenging to do all of that when we used to have 12 people do it. And during that time, I remember it was so hot. It was insanely hot. And it was one of those summers. And the moms that we served came and they brought us food and they brought us cold drinks.
Oh,
And
wow.
they from the little that they had collected the money and they went and got like all this stuff for us. And I was so touched by the way they showed their appreciation to us. And again, They have a little and they still share it with us. And I think that's one of the things a lot of people don't realize, that while they are receiving a lot of services and they are free, they also find a way to give back to us as well.
God, what an incredible story. And it's so true. You know, what I take from that, and I think it's just something we should all remember, is it's not the size or amount, it's the giving. That's what counts.
Hmm.
And I just think giving anything is giving. And giving makes us feel good and makes the receiver feel cared about. And I just love that. I think it's beautiful. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to talk about South Central Lamp, who might that be?
I've thought about that. Believe it or not, I used to like America Ferrera.
Oh, yes.
She used to be on Superstore. I
Yes.
really liked her. I liked her story. She really worked with women and with immigrant women. And once she had her child, I definitely think things shifted for her. And now she understood like the power of being a mom and the importance and all of that stuff. And I would always say, like, I think she would be such a good support person, because I feel like she's just really authentic as well. And I think that people who are authentic and who really care about these things would make such a big difference.
I think that's a great choice. And I think you should reach out to her if you haven't already. You never know, you never know what door can open. I always believe in reaching out to people and letting them know who you are and what you're doing. Maybe
That's
send
true.
the podcast. Well, hashtag, but that I don't think that always goes to the person. But, if you can, that would be great. So
That would be
wouldn't that
awesome.
be amazing? Because I think you're right. I know exactly who you're talking about. So I want to just take a moment, Diana, and tell you how fabulous this conversation was. It was so fun learning about you and your family and the program and your own personal story about what sort of how you got into this, and you and your sister in the nonprofit space, which doesn't surprise me, and the level of leadership that you provide for this agency. And a shout out to the board and a shout out to your staff and volunteers. But you have created something remarkable. And I welcome you to the Small and Gutsy family. I hope you don't remain small for very long, but you will always, always be gutsy. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that. And I really do appreciate it. And we are so grateful to have people who care about the families that we serve, especially during these times. It always means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the women. And I always let them know, because we started this thing called the Passport Project to support the women and ensuring that all their children had passports in case
So
of
smart.
separation.
Ugh.
And
Mm-hmm.
this was all through volunteers and people who wanted to help. And I always tell them, like, all these people care. I
Mm-hmm.
know that you see these things on TV, but that's only what you see on TV.
Right.
There's a huge community of people who care and don't believe these things. And so thank you so much for having me on and for sharing our story and for taking the time as well to get to know us.
I love it. And I also love that when there's a need that fits your mission, you create a program around it, just like the passport.
Yes,
That's so great. It's like,
that's
we didn't
right.
even talk
That's
about
right.
that. And so, how do people reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to our website, which you will post as well. And then right there, there's an email for me, and you can email me or our development director, Nicole, and you can donate however you want to. And if you wanted to go to the Passport Project, just put that on the note. And all proceeds go to that. There is no like, well, we get 10%. There's none of it.
Nothing.
All that money,
It's great.
because we're small and because we get to make these kinds of decisions, because of the funding that we get that allow us to pivot when we need to pivot, then it's these kind of programs that don't get touched by administration. They just go
So
straight to them.
it's great because they're also for a very
Yeah.
specific period of time or purpose. So to share I'll put it in the notes in the show, but share your website and share a phone number just because people are different kinds of learners, right?
So our website is www.southcentrallamp.org. It's a very long word, but yes, it's all together. And then our phone number is 323-234-1471.
Right. I am hoping that this podcast helps spread the word for you. It has just been a total delight. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much, Laura. We really appreciate it too.
It's great. Please go to smallandgutsy.org to check out all of our episodes. And if you're so inclined, please purchase some Small and Gutsy merchandise, consider sponsoring an episode, or making a donation. Both are tax deductible and help keep us going and spotlighting these great organizations. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and don't reflect the position or views of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, the donors, the sponsors, and my incredible board of directors, Brianna Carmichael, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Ari McCoy, Melissa Greitz, and Serena Rajabian, who believed in me in this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. And thank you for listening. Together, we are spreading social impact, and you can help us. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to email me the name of any organization you feel would benefit from being interviewed. From small and gutsy to big with impact. I'm Dr. Laura Shirk-Witkoff, and thanks for listening.